My name is Danielle Arets. I'm a reader in journalism in the Netherlands, and I'm also a design researcher based at the Design Academy in Eindhoven, an international design school. And I will present you a tool, a research tool that we developed together with our partners IDFuse, a tech company, and Cream on Chrome, which is an artistic design research studio. And the tool is called Newsslider. But before I do that, let me quickly introduce what we do actually in our research lab. We are based at the School of Journalism, and we work mainly with journalism researchers, but we also have quite a lot of design researchers involved in our institute. And we closely collaborate with our ICT partners, which means that we really try to develop as well as research the future of journalism, focusing on AI tools and make sure that they also become meaningful for investigative journalism, but also for new journalistic practices. And we do that with, you could call it almost a philosophy. We truly believe that journalists in general need to think as designers, which means that we focus on the practice of designers, the making, but also the tinkering with technology, and try to implement that in the educational system as well as in our research. And I think it's important to mention that up front to also understand how we came about this project. Skip this one. What I'm about to present is a project that we developed over the past 2 years. It's called the 4D Newsroom, and the tool itself is called the Newsslider. And it started actually with a research question of the two designers, Jonas Althous and Martina Huynh, who together are Studio Cream on Chrome. They started with the question, why is journalism each and every day starting anew? Why is there no longer a time frame? And can we develop something that helps, empowers journalism to do better, to actually keep historical data into account when producing daily updates? And they were actually inspired by the Cubist movement, the art movement, thinking that why couldn't we create actually a sort of four-dimensional space of the newsroom, keep time as a factor into consideration. So that became the four-dimensional newsroom, first as a sort of almost crazy idea. And then we started to research this based on a couple of case studies. And one case study was the famous saying of Angela Merkel. You might still recall that saying that "wir schaffen das." She mentioned that at the beginning of her political career, when we had a huge refugee crisis, we still have in Europe, obviously. But she mentioned that as Europe can deal with the refugee crisis. But when we looked at the archives and started to do a discourse analysis, which is a common method in journalism to do sort of close reading and critically reflect on how that saying is contextualized, we saw that this narrative actually changed radically over time. That this famous saying of "wir schaffen das," that became almost, well, it was a famous quote, it still is in Germany, that it changed over time and that it actually became more narrow-minded. It wasn't still Europe could deal with the refugee crisis. No, it was the Germans that could deal partly with refugees, and it was problematic enough. This is a sort of common method in journalism to do this kind of critical discourse analysis and see how context, language changes over time, how a debate evolves. So it's important research. However, it's very time consuming. And then we thought, can we actually do that in a smarter manner, making use of new and emerging technologies? We teamed up for this with the Institute of Beeld en Geluid, which is one of the largest archives in the Netherlands that have, well, all the television programs, also online news programs archived in a very well-maintained archive. It's called Claria. And this website and this archive could help us quite a lot with our idea to see how we could actually make sure that journalists could use historical information better. Well, together with our partner, Tijmen Altena, who is also present, but I'm not sure whether he's able to present. Tijmen, can you make yourself heard, or is that possible to join in? Don't think he can, so hopefully I will say the technical information correctly, otherwise you can definitely get in touch with him. What we did is actually use this archive and then develop something that we called Newsslider, a research tool that helps us actually to come up with almost any research term. In this case, we focus on climate change, as you can see on the top of the page. And based on named entity linking technology that makes actually combinations between that term and associates that with other famous and commonly used terms like climate policy, ecological affairs, heat stress, drought, the ozone layer, all these terms that are used quite frequently in the climate change debate. It immediately links these terms, and it looks in the archive how often these terms come across and how this debate evolves over time. So as you can see in this slider and the dashboard that we will present you right now, you see how these terms change over time. In the 80s, well, 1980, we were talking mainly about acid rain. And then, well, currently we talk quite a lot about emission rights, obviously. So it not only shows us how the wording changes, but also the sentiments, as well as iconic images, because we use this huge archive of the image archive of Beeld en Geluid, and we can show also some famous images, iconic episodes that really had an impact on that debate. We truly think that these kind of tools can be very helpful for journalism, because it's not only a very nice to have, because it was quite fun to develop that, but we also think it can be very meaningful for newsrooms. So after the development phase, we developed a sort of minimum viable product and tested this with a lot of journalists, also with policymakers and chief editors. And they saw quite a lot of value in the tool, because not only can it help them to contextualize almost any topic, it could also potentially, at least that's what we have in mind right now, offer really good guidance to the audience to also navigate their own archives, because a lot of media outlets have quite a good and well-maintained archive, but never use it, never really open it up to the public. Whereas if they should, it could be a very engaging way, well, a very interesting way to engage the audience in news. I see Tijmen is online, so maybe it might be nice to also ask him to explain a bit more about the technicalities. But before I do, it might be nice to show also that this installation is not only an online installation, but Cream on Chrome, the design studio, also turned it into a physical installation. So this is the installation that was exposed in ZKM in Karlsruhe, in Hasselt in the museum, many other places where this is actually a really nice exhibition and conversation piece for people to literally scroll through the news and well, be more engaged in current items. Having that said, I think it might be nice to also explain a bit more about the technicalities. Tijmen, can you add to this, please?
Yeah, I can perhaps briefly share a bit about what we've done. We created this as a web portal that's accessible when you're inside of the boundaries of these institutions. So for the Beeld en Geluid archive, for example, there are some IP issues related to having access to the archival material. So it's accessible when you're inside at their premises. And we use a number of new natural language processing techniques that are increasingly using AI. Focusing on stuff like sentiment analysis, automated term extraction, syntactic parsing of the text that accompanies a video or the speech that has been recognized by other algorithms, to paint a picture of how the discourse changed over time, and how the utterances or descriptions of certain media has evolved and changed over time. And that gives a researcher, but also journalists, the opportunity to look at how the societal discussion, societal debate changes over time. We're still looking to expand this suite of tools and NLP approaches that we use to analyze this data. So also looking at topic modeling, and as Danielle mentioned, named entity linking, to also attach other entities from the world based on Wikidata to these types of analyses.
Yeah, I think we might still have a few minutes left, but then we can open the floor for discussion. Might be good to indeed mention, as Tijmen already said, we're still developing this tool. We're about to implement this also, at least that's the plan, in a couple of newsrooms in the Netherlands, but we're also in touch with the national government to see whether this could also be a very helpful tool for policymakers. I already mentioned that because they also notice that, well, our human brain has quite a lot of shortcomings, obviously, when it comes to historical data, especially for policymakers that have huge pile of information that they have to digest on a daily basis. So it could be very helpful to use these kind of tools to, well, sometimes refresh memories, see how specific debates evolved and what were iconic moments in time, to also see how sometimes they can tap into that or make use of that. So we will still continue working on this, and if you have any questions, we are very happy to have a debate about this. So I think we conclude with that.